Hello and welcome back to the Bird's Eye View podcast. We are here on Wednesday, October 22nd to record a World Series preview. I'm your host, Zach Worden, joined as always by Jori Negin-Shecter. And Jori, it's time. The World Series, Toronto Blue Jays against the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Zach, can you believe we're doing a World Series preview?
No. If you had told me in March that we had been doing it, if you told me in February, in January, in December, in March, April, May, I probably would have called you crazy and said not for the Blue Jays. Yeah. But what a season. You never know where a season will take you, and it has brought us to this point where the Los Angeles Dodgers are on their way to Toronto because the Blue Jays have home field advantage over the $400 billion team.
Yeah, shall I make the same joke 5 million people have already made? Shohei Ohtani is on a plane to Toronto. Yeah, well, a couple things. First of all, nice to be recording an episode not at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
What a change of pace for us. That's first and foremost. Second of all, did not think that we would be, as we kind of said before we hit the record button, did not think we would be going on episode 10 or 11 or 12 or whatever this is of the postseason, staring down the barrel of more than a baker's dozen. But wow, the Blue Jays are about to host the Los Angeles Dodgers for their first World Series appearance in 30 plus years, and the Jays have home field, like you said. Everything about this boggles the mind. And I think on that note, we should get right into this and discuss how the Jays stack up against the reigning World Series champions.
Well, before we do, I just wanted to go back because obviously we had our Game 7 reaction episode where we kind of talked a little bit about the game. And I think, maybe we didn't talk as much about the game as much as the historical context of the Blue Jays going to the World Series and the emotion of the night. But, as we sit here a couple days removed from that victory, I just want to know like how you're feeling and how you've kind of processed the fact that the Blue Jays did, in fact, win the American League Championship Series to advance here.
It's it still boggles the mind. It's still crazy. What a game, obviously. The Springer stuff just, you know, a couple days
How
to let
many
it
times have
simmer
you watched it?
at least 50 times. It's coming up on my Instagram Reels. It's showing up on Sportsnet Central. It's showing up on my YouTube channel. Or on my YouTube. It's everywhere. And can you fault anyone for not wanting to watch it for the 500th time? This is again probably the second biggest homer in modern Blue Jays history, if you want to go back to 1993, and then the biggest homer of my Blue Jays lifetime because the Joey bat flip was one thing. The Springer homer is something entirely different. It literally launches the Blue Jays into the World Series. So yeah, just a few days to soak it in, and that post series win afterglow has gone absolutely nowhere.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, man, that we get to sit here and talk about a World Series. Let's get into it though. Obviously, the most notable news and change for this series is that Bo Bichette appears to be ready. And obviously, we're sitting here recording on Wednesday, and the roster won't come out until Friday, so we won't have like official confirmation. Maybe they'll kind of officially lock it down at the media day tomorrow. But I think we can operate under the assumption that Bo Bichette is going to play because he said he's going to play. And it sounds like he kind of realized that he was going to play midway through the ALCS based on some reporting around the situation. So, I mean, Bo Bichette, we went really hard on the roster decisions on the ALDS preview and not as hard on the CS preview. We'll probably go even less hard here, but I mean, Bo Bichette on the roster, I would imagine that they probably go 14 position players and 13 pitchers, given how, they only used Yariel so loosely in the CS. Eric Lauer only pitched once. I obviously Joey Loperfido didn't really play in the series. He only came in when Springer got hurt, but with Bo seemingly going to be resigned to DH duty, I think that you kind of want to have the positional flexibility there.
Yeah, it seems like that's going to be the case. Going to be really interesting, obviously, because you've got Springer as well, kind of hobbling around. Though obviously you hope that he will be at least closer to 100%, if not 100%, by the time the World Series gets underway. But, for me, I think, you got to probably go out there and expect that you're going to have to get kind of funky with the machinations here. The Bo Bichette stuff is obviously the story. If he comes back, the hope is he comes back and hits the ground running. And, with a guy with the kind of contact skills that he has, even if he's not timed up perfectly, even if the power stroke isn't quite there, the mere presence of him in the lineup adds such an enormous piece back to the Blue Jays equation. So I think that, for me, I think 14-12 is probably going to be the play. I don't know exactly what that means as far as the rest of the roster. Does that mean something like Barger's playing time starts to get slashed? Does that mean something like Nathan Lucas is in the lineup less frequently? There's going to be some stuff to fool around with here. But at the end of the day, those are sacrifices you make 10 times out of 10, you know, 8 times a week if you can get Bo Bichette back in your lineup.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, just for sake of it, like it's probably Yariel that you're taking off the roster there. You're probably carrying the same group, and obviously you're going to need Lauer in this series more than you did against the Mariners because of the top of this Dodgers order is pretty lefty heavy, obviously. So it's I think Yariel is maybe the guy. You agree with that?
Yeah, I think, like we kind of said in the previous series, Yarieli been a good soldier, but the trust with him seems like it's kind of evaporated. The command has kind of gone by the wayside. It's just a bit of a shame, but
Can you guess his K minus BB percentage in the playoffs?
is it in the negatives? I bet it's in the negatives.
It is, but I want to see if you can guess what the negative is.
Oh man, maybe like minus 5%.
It is minus 21.4%.
Whoa, whoa.
He is striking out 7.1% of the hitters he is facing and walking 28.6% of them.
Yeah.
And that is in 2.2 innings. So again, that is like the smallest sample size ever, but um that's one strikeout and four walks
Yeah.
in four appearances.
That's that's not gonna do it. Here's a bit of a follow-up for you. I'm not really sure what the machinations to do so would be, but do you give any consideration for Justin Brule playing into this series the way that he did in the Yankee series?
Um, I I I mean, like, who would you put him on for?
That's the question, right? But obviously they're so lefty heavy in Los Angeles. I wonder if they treat it like they treated the Yankee series.
Yeah, I just don't think that Brule was good enough in the Yankee series. His only appearance, he got lit up. Like, to me, I would like if it, if it came down to it, like I would rather have Braden Fisher or Chris Bassett, um, or one of your other righties like have to pitch to the top of the order than Justin Brule.
Yeah, and I don't think that's necessarily an outlandish take. It's just something I think
Yeah,
worth
like
considering because the Justin Brule thing, we forget about it, but that even was a surprise when the Blue Jays made that call in the Yankee series, right? So, I wonder if that is something that they will give some consideration to.
yeah, I mean, like I guess it would have to be Fisher that would come off because that would be kind of the spot. And he has also been not very effective in the postseason, but like obviously the larger sample size suggests that he's been way better than that. And um they didn't really use him in the Mariners series either. So like maybe it could be a possibility. Like I mean, I probably wouldn't do it, but maybe they like Brule's kind of like sweeper against that group.
Yeah, that's the only thing that you could think, right? There is going to be, I mean, listen, the Shohei Ohtani question is going to be the $1 million question because this is a guy that is literally Vladdy-esque against righties, and against lefties, he's, shall we say, Isaiah Kiner for left-esque, and that's against a very
Well,
specific type of lefty this postseason. I should clarify. Over the course of the his career, Shohei Ohtani, but he's got about a 1500 OPS against righties and about a 650 OPS against lefties this postseason. And a big part of that is when you are a lefty basically throwing sidearm, because this is basically this guy's only hole in his swing is against basically sidearm lefties. He's a bit vulnerable. So that's where a guy like a Mason Fluharty is going to basically become your Shohei Ohtani specialist.
yeah, so
And outside of that, it's going to be who else can fill any of those types of roles.
I pulled this up. The top three guys in the Dodgers order. Obviously, I think Teo slides up in that top three against lefties, but the Blue Jays don't have any lefty starters. So, unless Eric Lauer, maybe draws into the Chris Bat or the Max Scherzer position, which I don't think he will because he hasn't really pitched at all. I would imagine that the Dodgers order is going to be Shohei, Mookie, Freddie, like almost every game. Um, and then, so I pulled it up here, like how those three did against each pitch type from left-handed pitchers, right? So just to kind of like see where, who might kind of have the best chance. And obviously, Fluharty kind of seems to be the one that might be the most likely to kind of get that assignment. And it's not super surprising. I mean, Shohei and Freddie both have pretty significant whiff rates against left-handed sweepers. Mookie doesn't really, but like I mean, you kind of got to pick your poison at that point. And then the cutters as well. Freddie's whiff rate against lefty cutters is really high. Shohei, was okay against lefty cutters, but I think, if you just kind of spam him sweepers, then that's kind of what you're gonna have to do against lefty curveballs. So this is like the Brendan Little thing, right? Like all three of them um, or sorry, Mookie and Freddie were not very good against lefty curveballs, but Shohei was. Obviously, Little doesn't really throw his curveball in the zone, so I guess you're looking for the swing and miss there. And then all three of them were not very good against left-handed sinkers. Shohei and Mookie had negative run values against them, and Freddie had a zero run value against lefty sinkers.
I mean, that trio, that triumvirate is going to be just critical this postseason, or excuse me, this World Series. Uh, I just don't think that the Jays have any shot if those three lefties aren't playing significant roles against the likes of Shohei Ohtani and to a marginally lesser extent Freddie Freeman. Because if if Ohtani goes out and does his Ohtani thing, this thing is a wrap. The only way that you've got a shot against these Dodgers, I think, is if you are able to neutralize the stars and then outslug the rest of what is an extremely deep Los Angeles Dodgers lineup.
I also did the same thing for those three against right-handed pitch types, and yeah, not exactly a lot of positive takeaways from righties getting those guys out. So
What's
um,
what? What's the splitter
you
situation
don't
with
want to
these? Oh boy.
know. Against right-handed splitters, Freddie hit 529 with a
Oh,
five batter run value. Shohei hit 300 with a three run value. Mookie hit
oh,
400 with a one batter run value. And of course,
oh.
that's like not significant amount of pitch types, but still, like I mean, when you're cutting it up into these samples, it's always going to be
Uh, well, Kevin Gosman, Trey Savage, good luck.
Let's get into, I mean, obviously, Bo Bichette, I guess, for his part, like how important do you think it's going to be to kind of have him back on the roster for this?
Critical, enormous, cannot be overstated. Jays have obviously been incredible offensively, and that's largely been because of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. But to inject a guy like this in the lineup goes without saying, takes you from literally, I mean, it's normally I would say takes you from playoff contender to World Series contender, but all of a sudden the Blue Jays are still a World Series contender. But I think it takes you from World Series hopeful to World Series contender for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be, especially against like just this um Dodgers pitching staff, right? Like it's pretty insane, the group of starters that they're going to run out. And I think, we'll kind of talk about it later, but I think the Blue Jays' hope in this series is going to be adding on against the Dodgers bullpen, which has been a weakness, right? And the Brewers were just absolutely unable to do that. Like the Dodgers pitchers were going 6, 7, 8 complete games in that series. And, when they're able to kind of go Roki Sasaki at the end of games and Alex Vesia, like and not have to worry about anybody else. Like it's a huge win for them. And Bo Bichette is going to play a huge role in that, right? Because he's a guy who can foul off tough pitches, who can kind of match the level of good pitching. And I think back to the Tarek Skubal start in the regular season where Bo Bichette's like 13 pitch at bat against him kind of chases him from the game. Like stuff like that is going to be kind of what you need from Bo against the likes of Blake Snell, against Shohei Ohtani, against Tyler Glasnow, against Yoshinobu Yamamoto. It's gonna be really, really important to kind of like have a guy like that who can work tough pitchers.
Yeah, I think that's the Jays' best bet. They're not going to pile on the runs against basically any of their starters. Uh, you know, Particularly you look at like Blake Snell right now is as unhittable as any guy this side of Tarek Skubal, Paul Skeens. And if you're gonna have to face him, the best way to go after him is to make him work, right? Because this is a guy that at times has really kind of been a bit of a five and dive guy, right? And that hasn't been the case because he's been so exceptional. But if you can make him expend a lot of pitches, that's probably your best bet. You're not going to put up 5, 6 runs on this guy. That's extremely unlikely. But if you can just make him throw 20, 25 pitches an inning, which is a big ask, but not an impossible one for this Blue Jays team that does not really miss bats very often, that's probably your clearest pathway to getting to a Dodgers bullpen that, in theory, should be moderately vulnerable at times.
Yeah, it's honestly like to me kind of where the series might be decided is going to be kind of in those in the bridge innings for the Dodgers to get to Roki and Vesia and whoever else they kind of have coming out of the back there. But the Snell thing is so interesting to me. Like obviously he'll get game one. How many at bats do you think David Schneider will take against Blake Snell in the trajectory before game one?
Until the machine starts malfunctioning.
Yeah. Until Blake Snell starts looking like um I don't know. Does Blake Snell have a notable doppelganger?
Uh,
I was gonna say Pete
Pete
Davidson,
Davidson.
but that's Christian Yelich's thing, but close enough, I guess. Um yeah, let's go through position by position. Obviously the series, the Dodgers come in with a very um impressive lineup and the rotation is obviously big, but let's start with the rotation. Snell, Yamamoto, Glasnow, Shohei against what we're assuming is going to be Gosman, Yasavage, Bieber, and Scherzer.
Yeah.
How do we feel about obviously, I think in the Mariners series where like the Mariners have the starting pitching advantage, but it wasn't as significant as you would think. This one, it's gonna be a tough beginning of games for Blue Jays hitters.
The Dodgers are paying their starting rotation upwards of $1 billion. It's not rocket science. This is the best rotation, arguably in the history of baseball. That is
Wow.
four aces you rhymed off there.
Well, yeah.
The four undisputed, irrefutable top of the rotation would be the Blue Jays' number one pitcher. They have the four best pitchers in this series. That's not where the series is going to be won or lost, I think, for the Blue Jays at least. For the Dodgers, if they can shut down the Blue Jays, it's a wrap. But that is not where the Blue Jays are going to be going toe to toe, I think. I think that it's going to be elsewhere. The Dodgers very comfortably are the best rotation this postseason has to offer.
Yeah. I was going through Blake Snell's excuse me, career starts against the Blue Jays, and this guy has done fairly well against them in his career.
Well, even his last outing against the Jays when he started for the Dodgers this season, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I can pull them up very
I
quickly, but
have them if you want to try and take a shot at him.
he completely diced the Jays up. He may have held them to one hit.
Three hits, no runs, three walks, 10 Ks in 5 innings.
which is just not a great omen, but you hope that, you see the pitcher twice, he's 6 months apart, and you hope that the outcomes are better this time around.
So Blake Snell in his career against the Blue Jays has never allowed more than 4 runs in a start. And both times he did that, he was pitching into the seventh inning. Um, and he owns like a 2.39 career ERA against them.
Yeah.
But that means the Blue Jays are due against Blake Snell, right?
Is that how this works? Is that how this works?
Come on. I mean, like the way that this postseason is played out, like obviously Blake Snell is rolling right now and might be like at the best he's ever been. But surely that means that the Blue Jays are gonna like finally do something against him, right? That's
You know what? If you feel that's the case, then all the
I
power to you.
I'm very notably Blake Snell pilled, so that's maybe a little tongue in cheek saying that. But it's gonna be interesting. I mean, obviously the Blue Jays have fared well against lefties this year. Davis Schneider hasn't didn't really factor into the Mariners series all that much, but he played a lot in the Yankee series against Max Fried and Carlos Rodon,
Well, I mean, the,
and
the Mariners didn't have any lefty starters to
yeah,
throw at you.
and even their lefty relievers, it was Gabe Spire and Caleb Ferguson, and Caleb Ferguson wasn't pitching in the series. So, I mean, you kind of think about that, and I think it's a big opportunity for Davis Schneider to get in there and play. Do you think that, I mean, again, the lineups will change so much, but I would assume that what they do is they go Springer, Schneider comes checks in for Lucas in this scenario, and then it's Vlad, and then it's Bo. Like Bo is just going to slot right into that 4 hole as a DH. Springer will play probably in left field, and then Barger in right, Ernie at third, um, Davis at second, or do you go Davis left, Springer right, Barger third, Ernie second?
I kind of lean that second one. But I guess the question is,
I think,
who do you? I don't know.
yeah, I mean, like either way, it's you're sacrificing some defense in the outfield for sure.
Yeah, which is just a matter of fact if Springer's going to be out there.
Yeah.
I guess what you put it. Are we just we've pot committed to Springer, and are
I
we?
I well, I guess what you could do if this is again just a game one thing, but um, Barger and Snell, that's probably not a matchup that you feel very confident in. So maybe you go Miles Straw in for Barger, and then you have Straw in left or Straw in right because if they have a bunch of lefties, Straw in right, Varsho in center, Springer in left, and then Davis at second and Ernie at third. And then you kind of like you kind of like balance that offense defense thing, and then you have Barger as your to come ready to come off the bench for whenever.
Yeah, like I mean, it's going to be a question of how much you value the power bat of Barger. He had a pretty good series against the Mariners, even
He
though he
did
kind of started
sneaky,
slow.
well, sneaky. He has like a 800 or close to 900 OPS in these playoffs.
Yeah, but I just don't know exactly what he's going to do against Blake Snell. I don't know. I think that's going to be a really interesting kind of through line to follow is exactly how the Jays utilize the Lucases and the Bargers and anyone else. I mean, there's no more Santander to worry about, but any lefty that the Jays have out there, really.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see. I mean, as far as the Blue Jays pitchers go, like matching up against this team, Gosman, you Savage, the Savage stuff is so interesting to me. Like just like obviously, we've talked about him so much this year, and for him to be going to be making a World Series start, do you go with him in Game 1 since Gosman pitched in relief on Monday?
I thought that was going to be the case, but Shreddy VD spoke on Sportsnet Central yesterday. Didn't give the impression that that was going to be the case. It really seemed like Gosman was going to be fresh enough, only through 20 odd pitches, that he would still be ready to go for Friday.
So that's still only 3 days rest, right? Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But I
I don't know.
mean,
I mean, I
like
don't get the sense that.
like I
Well,
I don't know. Like if it's me, I'd probably want like a fresher starter to open the series, especially when Obviously we said this in the Mariners series, but I do feel like these first two games are going to be really, really, really important for the Blue Jays, right? Because you're going to be going into Dodger Stadium with Bieber and Scherzer, who, Bieber hasn't been a world beater, and Scherzer, obviously as good as he was in Seattle, it's going to be kind of a less ideal matchup for him against these Dodgers bats.
Yeah, man. At this point, it's a bit of a throw your hands in the air and pray thing. Uh, I'm really not totally sure how they're going to do this. I do think Osmond probably ends up going game one just because I think that even on short rest, you think of it as almost like a side session for him.
Yeah.
I don't think the Jays are going to deviate from that, and I think that they'll probably want you Savage for game two. But I guess we'll see. Like it's hard to know with particular certainty exactly what the Jays are feeling as far as their rotation, right? I think that you probably go you Savage one, but I also could totally understand if the Jays felt that game one was so critical that they wanted Gosman on the mound regardless.
Yeah, yeah, I would get that for sure. And I mean, Yamamoto going two for the Dodgers is interesting. The Blue Jays have never seen him before. He's kind of had like an up and down postseason, so we'll kind of see how that lands. And then obviously they've seen Glass now before. Um, they won the game that he started in the regular season for the Dodgers. They didn't, necessarily get to him, but and then Shohei going game four. I think they obviously haven't announced that officially yet, but I figure they would kind of keep things the same as they did in the CS. Shohei has only pitched three times against the Blue Jays, and obviously not since 2022. So gonna be interesting to see
Yeah,
kind of how
kind of a
things.
different Shohei also, right? This is
Yeah.
not the same Shohei starter that was with the Angels.
Yeah.
This is an upgraded Shohei.
Yeah, 100%. This is like he's been like a top 15 pitcher in baseball. Like
He
it's
was almost a Blue Jay. Oh, well, I'm not gonna get into it.
I think that is an interesting like storyline though. And obviously we've kind of deviated from the who has the advantage at certain positions. So let's do this quick and then we'll go back to that. But I mean the Roki and Shohei factors, and you can throw Teo into this too, where it's like the Blue Jays have interest in all of these guys. You could throw Teo into it as like it happened, not like the same level of dramatics. The Shohei and Roki thing where, the Blue Jays were in on them, kind of the seemingly runner up. Certainly going to be a narrative in the series, and the Shohei boos and the Roki boos when they get announced um on Friday night are going to be pretty significant, I would
It's gonna be
imagine.
fun. It's gonna be really, really good theater.
Do
Oh, and by
you
the way, Miles Straroki Sasaki, we were joking about it
Oh my.
earlier. Oh my God, I want that matchup so bad.
Roki finally cracked in one of the games against the Brewers. So, um that's me coping again, I suppose.
I mean, listen, I think we're kind of beating around the bush here. The Dodgers are significant favorites, and I don't think that that's really a particularly hot take. I think it would take a pretty substantial set of the stars aligning for the Jays to take this series. But we've doubted the Jays,
Yeah.
God, since April, and all they've done is prove us wrong. So goodness knows that a World Series victory here is not out of the cards.
So relievers, obviously this is an area where the Blue Jays probably have a little bit of an advantage. Obviously, Roki's been good in these playoffs. Vesia had a good season. Trinan, I mean, has been not very good this year, but I mean, this is a guy who was closing World Series games for them a year ago. It sounds like Tanner Scott might be back in the mix for the Dodgers. We'll kind of see how it plays there. But I mean, when you're looking at the rest of their relief core that they were running out in the CS, I mean, it was Emmett Sheehan, Anthony Bonda, Jack Dreyer, Ben Kasparius, Justin Robleski, and Clayton Kershaw. Like, obviously there's talent there because there's talent all up and down the Dodgers organization, but I think when you're looking at areas where the Blue Jays can win, I think that their relievers, like their leverage relievers, can kind of stand up to that.
Yeah, I don't think that the Jays leverage guys are dramatically or demonstrably worse. I think Rocky's probably this reinvigorated Roki is probably the most compelling relief arm in the series for good reason. But outside of him, I look at Varland, I look at Hoffman, I look at Seranthony Dominguez, I look at even Mason Fluharty and the significance that he could play in the series.
Yeah, well, there
And
that's going to be the importance, right? Is those lefties are going to be like Brendan Little, get back on the horse, brother, because you're
yeah,
you're going to be needed.
the Brendan Little experience is not done quite yet.
Yeah. It's gonna be so interesting. I think, Hoffman obviously the velo hasn't been back, but he's looks good. Bassett, I mean if he's throwing, 96 turbo sinkers, like
That's gonna turn into an immediate bullpen weapon too.
yeah, like, I think he probably earned himself higher leverage with that outing against the Mariners in the eighth inning there. I think you could certainly lean on him and maybe even be like, hey, you're going to be our eighth inning guy. Like, is that too dramatic to say from one
No, I
outing?
think this is, I don't know if you follow Pitch Profiler on Twitter, but literally all of his stuff metrics as a
Yeah,
reliever were like 110 or better. This guy looks like a relief monster. He came out there and looked like a primetime shutdown closer,
yeah,
which all of the sudden the Jays have pulled something out of their butt here. They might have another high leverage arm.
yeah. He's the Blue Jays Roki Sasaki.
Yeah, I mean that's probably the best comparison.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind. Dominguez obviously hasn't been great in the postseason. He's kind of got the high walk thing. Obviously, he gives up the grand slam. Like, if you want a guy like Bassett, like, I mean, hell, I would totally be fine with him kind of taking on an important role in the series, especially with how much Louis Varland has thrown, right? Like, I think it's what in the Blue Jays 11 postseason games, he's pitched in 10 of them. So, this is a guy that's gonna have to really enjoy his offseason when it comes around. But having an extra arm like Bassett kind of showed the way that he did, I think, hey, like could be a significant factor in the series.
Absolutely could. And it's funny too. I was saying this to you uh, while we were texting back and forth that it's funny that there had been quotes from last year where he was like, "Yeah, I could throw 95 if I wanted to. I just choose not to." And everyone kind of scoffed and they were like, "Well, like clearly you can't because why would you?" And then he comes out and does this.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy.
Yes.
The offense part of this, I mean, one thing, obviously the Dodgers, Shohei, Mookie, Freddie, Will Smith, Max Muncy, Teo, like that's a pretty intimidating top six, especially like playoff Teo. But, I think one thing that's going to be important that the Dodgers, kind of like the Blue Jays, when they get the production from Tommy Edman, from Kike Hernandez, from Andy Pages, like it kind of shifts the complexion of their offense, right? Like when you get the bottom of the order production, and we see it so frequently with the Blue Jays, like that's a group that I think the Blue Jays are going to have to like stay really dialed in on and not let them kind of set the table for Shohei, for Mookie, for Freddie.
Well, are we talking bullpen still here, or are
I
we
mean, I
talking
was
in
kind
the
of I
in
was
the
kind of shifting, but if you you
so
you got any more
so
bullpen stuff?
no, because what I was gonna say now is it a hot take to say that the Jays infield is better than the Dodgers infield? If we're
Yes.
talking, if listen, I mean, I'm taking Vladdy over Freeman right now,
Yeah.
and I'm taking Ernie Clement over Max Muncy right now, and then who's at second? It's like Miguel Rojas versus
It's Edmund's been playing.
well, Tommy Edmonds a bit better than that. Um, okay, maybe I rescind that take. I don't know. I feel like, this is a little bit cheating, but we don't have the DH spot here because technically Shohei blows out whoever he faces. However, if you want to like fake it and say Bo Bichette is technically your shortstop and or second baseman and Andres Gimenez, you want to talk about those two functionally acting as your middle infield. I think that the Jays infield absolutely stacks up with the Dodgers infield.
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny when you look at the infield that the Blue Jays ran out in game 7 of the ALCS being IKF, Jimenez, Barger, and Vlad. Again, say that at the beginning of the season and see how you feel. But yeah, I mean, I think the Bo coming back probably pushes IKF to the bench, but gives you some positional flexibility there, especially given the way that it'll be Springer to the outfield and moving guys around that way. Maybe IKF is in the lineup against a lefty, but even then, I think IKF probably his CS contributions were maybe where his time in this playoff ends if Bo is back on the roster. So um actually that's interesting though, now that I think about it, because I was talking about Davis at second. Maybe they would prefer IKF at second.
Would you prefer IKF at second?
I mean, that's what they just did, but that was against righty starters. So Snyder has obviously been their lefty guy. So I don't I don't think that maybe um when it's Glasnow, Yamamoto, Shohei, maybe IKF is back in there, but we'll see how that plays out. But Edman hasn't been the NLCS MVP Edman in these playoffs. I mean, he has a 118 WRC plus in these playoffs, so he's been pretty good, but he wasn't as good during the regular season. And then Kike, I guess he's kind of an outfielder for them right now, but it's a good group, man. It's a good team. It's a but I think you're right that Clement has been so significant. If you're including Barger in that group, like these are sneaky Blue Jays guys that are kind of like playing on that level.
Yeah, I think that the Jays, honestly, I think the Jays infield is right on par. And I think the Jays outfield is right on par. If we're putting George Springer in the outfield, and we're talking about Dalton Varsho, obviously coming off a bit of a weaker ALCS, but still the defensive acumen, best defensive center fielder in baseball. And then you're talking as well about him evolving as a hitter this year. And even in the postseason, he had a huge ALDS. He's still on the whole has been really effective if you look at the whole postseason. And then you're talking about in left field, under the right circumstances, it could be Nathan Lucas out there.
Yeah.
And if it's Lucas out there, that's three extremely competent, extremely effective, and really talented outfielders. And then you want to compare that maybe to the Dodgers. You're looking at what? Teoscar Hernandez, Kike Hernandez, and
Pajes.
Andy Pajes. I think the Jays stack up completely fine there.
Yeah, well, you got to prevent Kike from being playoff Kike because this guy ridiculous October performer. Like it's wild what he does in the playoffs. I mean, you look at it like in the regular season, he had a 70 WRC plus, and in these playoffs, he has a 125 for his
Bizarre.
career.
Just bizarre.
For his career, he has a 91 WRC plus in the regular season and a 132 in the playoffs, and
How do you
that's over 300 plate
Yeah,
appearances.
I will never understand that. What a strange dude to just be a huge playoff riser.
Yeah. Pajes minus 31 WRC plus so far these playoffs, but a 113 in the regular season. So yeah, will be interesting. Again, yeah, I think the defense will be interesting. I think Springer and Teo both being defensive outfielders in this series could be something to watch. Teo's kind of had this thing where it's like he makes an error and then yeah, comes up with a big hit to make up for it. But yeah, I mean the Teo of it all too is gonna be so fun because you get like the Teo return to Toronto and
He'll get some love during
yeah,
this.
for
If we
sure.
want to talk
Yeah.
about Otani and Roki getting a response, the Teo response will actually be, I think, quite fun. I think he might get, like, even in his first AB, I think that there's going to be some standing ovations and so forth. This episode of the Bird's Eye View podcast is brought to you by BioSteel. Use code Bird's Eye View at checkout for 20% off your order at biosteel.ca. Again, that's code Bird's Eye View at checkout for 20% off your order. For all your high performance hydration needs, visit biosteel.ca. Thank you again to BioSteel for sponsoring today's episode.
All right, let's move on to some of the X factors that we have for the series. Obviously, we've kind of talked around it a little bit, but I mean, most important matchups for you, most important players that you think are going to kind of decide the series.
Yeah, I mean, it goes without saying that Shohei Ohtani is the X factor of all X factors. And Vladimir Guerrero Jr. on the opposite side is the X factor of all factors. Those two are going to be enormous parts of any team's game plan, and the way that they are going to have to be treated by the opposing pitching staff is going to be with very delicate kid gloves. Outside of that, I look at the Mason Fluharty situation. I feel like he's just going to play such a critical role in really all three of the Jays lefties. out of the bullpen, I think are going to be really impactful. And then, as far as the hitting goes, because again, it just, for me, the Jays sticks are at their best when it's 1 through 9. And Ernie Clement's been such a key figure this postseason. And Nathan Lucas has been such a key figure this postseason. And obviously George Springer has immediately put himself on the level of excellence with what he did against the Mariners in game 7. It's gonna be someone like that. I don't know who it's gonna be, but maybe it's Dalton Varsho, maybe it is Ernie Clement again, maybe it's any number of those guys. But someone outside the top of this Blue Jays lineup is going to play a critical role in this World Series.
Yeah. 100%. I think for me, like you mentioned, the lefties and the bullpen are obviously going to be so important, but I think, the kind of sneaky important is going to be like not sneaky important, but like Varland, Dominguez, and Hoffman. Like they're probably going to at times have to take on that group, and I would imagine that Hoffman's more prominently than the other two there is going to have to figure out ways to get Shohei, Freddie, and Mookie out. So I think especially if in a close game, and now that Schneider has shown that he's willing to go to Hoffman with in the eighth inning for 6 outs or whatever. Like, I think if the Blue Jays are going to win this series, like Hoffman is going to have to be really at his best to kind of get those final outs. On the other side of it, I think Roki kind of same thing, right? Where, this is the first time that he's kind of pitched in this type of World Series atmosphere, right? And I'm sure that getting the boos coming down from the Toronto crowd if he has to close out a game at Rogers Center will be interesting to see how he responds. Um, so we'll see. I think the pitching stuff is so interesting. I mean, before we kind of move on to who we think, World Series MVPs, how do you like kind of like what do you think is going to be the difference between the Dodgers starters dominating this series and the Blue Jays hitters being able to continue to roll?
It's so tough to say, man. I wish I had an answer, and I don't think I have an answer. Just because I think it's almost like so obvious in that the Jays are just gonna have to continue to do what they've done, which is just be sons of bitches in the box.
Yeah.
It's gonna be tough ABs. It's gonna be grinding it out. It's gonna be not chasing almost anything. It's gonna be the lack of strikeouts. And it's gonna be making the Dodgers starters work their asses off to be able to get to the bullpen and then tagging the bullpen when you have an opportunity. It's gonna be about making good when we're talking about runners in scoring position. It's gonna be absolute perfection in the field. It's gonna be making sure that when you're pitching, you're not making mistakes. It's going to take just in a margin of error so razor thin. But on that note, this Jays team has basically ridden the razor's edge to this point and has made good to the tune of a World Series appearance. So it's not impossible, but certainly by any metric, it's improbable. But again, not impossible.
Yeah. I think not chasing is going to be the big thing for me for this Blue Jays offense. Obviously, they're coming out of a series where they were significantly in swing mode for most of it because the Dodgers were pounding the zone. And, funny enough, the Dodgers starters have actually been in the zone more frequently than the Mariners starters have been this series, but obviously the Jays just can't let these guys pitch into the seventh. I think you really have to make a concerted effort to get them out early and work their pitch counts. So I think not chasing is going to be really massive for them in the series.
Absolutely going to be enormous.
All right. World Series MVPs, give me one from each team if this is going to end in either way.
Cowards picks. Cowards picks incoming. It's Shohei Ohtani. It's Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Those
All
two are
right.
going to define this World Series for decades on end when we're thinking back to the 2025 World Series and exactly what it was about and how those two performed this World Series. I keep wanting to say postseason. It's crazy that they're in the World Series, man. It goes without saying. How those two perform is going to be an enormous part of the discussion, enormous part of the what's the word I'm looking for? The allure, the nostalgia, the way that this World Series is written in the history books. Those two will be right there. Their penmanship will be all over this World Series.
I'll go Kevin Gausman and Freddie Freeman. Gausman, I mean, we just saw him pitch games 1, 5, and 7, and maybe he'll have to pitch games 1, 5, and 7 again to help the Blue Jays to a World Series title. And then, Freddie, I think that it'll be interesting. The Shohei stuff is obviously Shohei's going to be Shohei. Mookie is obviously there, and Freddie, he was the World Series MVP last year, but I think like getting the production out of him for the Dodgers has been like pretty like duh. It's important. So we'll see. It's gonna be fun. Interesting stat from Sarah Langs during the CS is that this is going to be the fifth time where one league championship series was a sweep and the other went 7 games. And so far, all prior occasions, the team who went 7 games ended up winning the World Series.
Something to hang your hat on.
I mentioned the 2012 World Series earlier this year, and does this not kind of have like a like it's the Dodgers are that Tigers team on steroids. Because it was like Verlander, Scherzer, Miggy, Prince, but maybe not the the same level of like MVPs and Cy Young winners. And then the Blue Jays, maybe a little bit of like Giants-esque vibes to them. So we'll
Some
see.
stars, but definitely they've got a lot more. They've got a lot more Travis Ishikawas than they do Prince Fielders.
Yeah. All right. Before we run, let's do our picks. So far we've we haven't, well, I mean, like obviously we pick the Blue Jays every time, so
We've been perfect so far.
but
We're
we
undefeated.
we haven't hit the game total. Actually, I think I said Jays in 4 in the DS and you said Jays in 5. So I got that one right.
All right. Well, we're a Blue Jays podcast, so it's Blue
Expect
Jays in
some Blue
seven.
Jays picks.
It's Blue Jays in seven. I don't know. I think gun to my head, I do think it is probably the Dodgers series to win. I think if I want to be right, I'll say Dodgers in six. If I want my heart happy, it's Blue Jays in seven.
I'll say Jays in 6. Um Pathway to that, they come out, stun the Dodgers in the first 2 games. Stun, like, kind of surprise them with their energy, surprise them with their feistiness. You chase Snell early, you maybe get a shaky Yamamoto, you take the first 2, you go into LA, you get one win there, maybe you get a Mad Max performance, maybe Gosman shoves, and then you bring it back home for 6, and the Dodgers are nervous facing elimination, and um the Jays pull it off.
I too would like to live in this reality.
Who knows? We'll see. It's been a year where literally anything and everything has happened, and now we'll get another couple weeks for the rest of our lives, I suppose. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. Any last thoughts on the series from you before we run?
Your AL pennant winning, World Series representing Toronto Blue Jays, World Series bound, and about to play game one on Friday. Just, I can't believe it, man. Here we go. Here we go.
Here we go. Enjoy it. Thank you to everybody who has been tuning in so far. It has been, obviously some late nights, but a lot of fun to watch this team and talk about this team and witness the run that has culminated in a World Series appearance. So we'll be back after every game once again with our post-game reaction episodes. Obviously, might be some late ones again with the games starting so late and especially the West Coast ones. But yeah, appreciate everybody sticking with us, and that is going to do it for us here and our World Series preview. Make sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening along on the audio provider of your choice, make sure to drop a follow and review. You can follow us all on Twitter. I am at Worden_Zach. Jori is at J Negin-Shecter, and the pod is at BEB_pod. Thanks so much for listening and enjoy the series.